it's early morning by my reckoning. Well, no, it's not. It's 10:20. It's not that early. It feels early. When I wake up in the morning, I like to do some things to get my body going. Do you guys want to do something to get our bodies going? I mean, everybody's just sitting out there. So the first thing I like to do when I get up in the morning is get in touch with the planet Earth and do a little bit of grounding and earthing. So I'd invite you to join me if you'd like. Take your shoes off. Seriously, why not? We're all adults here. Some of us have showered, some of us haven't. We're going to find out who that is. And if you'd like, you don't have to sit down. There's no rules that you have to sit. You can stand if you want to. You can lunge. You know, one of my favorite positions, I'd love to see if anybody can do this. Just get up on your chair. Get into a little squat position on your chair. Wake the body up. Oh, yeah. That's one way I like to wake up in the morning. You know what another great thing is to wake you up in the morning? A little bit of oxytocin. Who knows what oxytocin is? The trust hormone, the love hormone. There's a couple different ways. You could get it. You could get it with sex, and you could get it with breastfeeding. But I'm not going to encourage any of you to engage in sex and breastfeeding right now. That could be awkward. However, one really good way to give yourself a big release of oxytocin is to find someone close to you and give them a hug or a handshake. Go ahead. Come on. Who's next to you? Give them a hug. Give them a handshake. We're all friends here. We're all part of the biohacking community. Give yourself a little oxytocin release. And do you know what another good thing to do is when you wake up in the morning? I do this every morning. Deep breathing practices and intense breathing practices and things that get your body hyper-oxygenated and activate your nervous system. So why don't we go ahead and stand up and put a hand on your stomach, right over your navel. Feel it move in and out. That should move in and out when you're breathing. Let's hypercharge our bodies. Let's hypercharge our bodies with 30 seconds of rapid fire breathing. It goes a little bit like this. Good. Go ahead. Let's go for 30 seconds. All through the belly. Hyperoxygenate that body. Who needs coffee when you have your breath? Keep going. A little faster. Little faster. Keep going. 10 seconds. Now breathe all your air out. Exhale. Everything out. Exhale everything. Everything. Hold it. Hold it. And then big breath in. Power pose. All that oxygen that you can breathe in. And let me hear one power sound. I don't care what it is for you. It can be a woohoo, it can be a ow, it can be a ow. Whatever you want. 1, 2, 3, woohoo! Yeah! Now we are awake, ready to conquer the day. We have a great day for you guys today. You're going to feed through the fire hose of biohacking information. And today, to kick things off, we're going to talk about how bad biohacking is. Who remembers the Goat Man from, well, a little over a year ago, right here in Finland? You got to meet the Goat Man, who he actually went through quite the protocol. For those of you who don't recall, how many of you remember the Goat Man that I talked about? Today's talk is Biohacking versus Ancestral Living 2.0. in which we're going to investigate the Goat Man and some things that might be familiar to you from a little over a year ago, and some new things. But for those of you who don't know who the Goat Man is, he's a man who developed a series of prosthetic limbs and a very cool helmet that looks like he borrowed it from a professional Ironman triathlete. And he went to live with the goats so that he could marry biohacking and ancestral living, so that he could basically change his body with goat limb prosthetics and go and be with the goats and live with the goats. His name is Thomas Thwaites. I believe he's an English. Is anybody in here an Englishman? Yeah, you guys are weird. He's an Englishman. He hails from the UK. And he says here, I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, You'll have access to these slides later, by the way, if you want to jot it down. It's at bengreenfieldfitness.com/Finland16. You can download everything. But he says he wanted to become a goat to escape the angst inherent in becoming a human. I like the bottom here. That's a little bit hard to read, but it says, anyway, I ended up in the Alps on 4 legs as a goat with a prosthetic rumen strapped to my chest, etc., etc. So, you know what's interesting is not only did he have a fantastic time going up and down the slopes, just like he almost looks like a goat, really. If I didn't know he was a human, I would probably think he was a goat. It's that good of a job, isn't it? Sometimes being a goat is hard. You fall. The prosthetic limbs take a little bit to get used to. He's not having as great a time as he probably could here. And you know what's very interesting? I didn't talk about this last year. Has anybody in here tried TDCS? Transcranial direct stimulation of your brain to, for example, spark up your motor cortex. There's actually a new company that just launched in the United States yesterday. You should look into this if you're a biohacker. They're called Halo Neuroscience. And I've actually been using it for about a month. And you put it on prior to exercise, and it shocks your motor cortex into reducing your rating of perceived exertion. So you don't feel as though you're exercising as hard when you're exercising, and it also enhances your cognitive performance when you're exercising. Well, Dear Thomas used a form of TDCS to inhibit his motor cortex's ability to be able to speak the human language. And those are the type of things that we're going to investigate today in terms of whether or not they're actually healthy or natural, in terms of whether or not we should actually look at life through the lens of whether or not something is simply going to enhance our cognitive or performance benefits, or whether it's potentially going to be deleterious to the human body. I would argue that deactivating your ability to speak the human language and going out and living with goats and strapping prosthetic limbs to your body might actually fall into the realm of, shall we say, overdoing things. But I'm curious about you guys. How many of you in here are open to the concept of gene editing, like CRISPR technology, that someone actually going in and altering your genes, like permanently altering your genes? How many in here would be open to that idea? 1, 2, 3. A few hands, a few random hands came up. How about brain chip implants to assist with the ability to communicate with others, or to perhaps be able to think better? Perhaps just get something cool attached to your head. Synthetic blood to enhance oxygenation, the ability to deliver glucose and nutrients and oxygen to the body. All right, so it's hard for me to tell exactly, especially with that bright light in my face, how many of you actually raised your hands in response to those. But let's see, granted this is an American study, what the Americans say about this. So gene editing, 68% are worried about it. Surprisingly, 49% of folks were pretty enthusiastic about permanently altering their genes, or gene editing to give babies a reduced disease risk, despite its lack of proven long-term safety. Brain chip implants, 69% of people were a little bit worried about that. Surprisingly, more than 1 in 3 of your friends are probably interested in getting some kind of a brain chip implant based off of this result from the Pew Research study. Synthetic blood. 63% of people were a little bit nervous about that. Again, I was kind of surprised. 36% of people were actually kind of interested in getting synthetic blood injected wherever you would inject synthetic blood. I don't quite know how the process works, but apparently it can be done. So it's actually quite interesting when you look at the statistics, that a lot of people are becoming more and more open-minded to this idea of taking a lot of the things out there in the expo, for example, and subjecting our bodies to those things, sometimes without necessarily looking into the long-term safety or the natural nature of some of these protocols. Take magnetic touch, for example. There is a group of biohackers who view the human body as basically what they call wetware. And hardware can be placed within the wetware of the human body. Magnetic touch is something that people are doing nowadays. They're actually getting magnetic implants in their fingers to be able to interact with technology a little bit better, and also to be able to sense things and moving objects with a little bit greater efficacy, to almost feel things without actually touching things. You know, this is a quote from someone who actually had this protocol done. He says, certain things were clear. Microwave ovens gave off a steady field that was easy to perceive, like a pulsating wave of invisible water. Other magnets were easy to identify. They lurked like landmines in everyday objects. There was a probing force field that shifted around in my flesh. I would wonder whether or not something like that is healthy, but when you think about some of the things that I want you to think about today as you go throughout the day, you need to ask yourself, am I naturally equipped without necessarily biohacking to tap into my own human nature, my own innate human biology, and experience some of these things myself? When we look at the earth, for example, I'm barefoot right now. If I were barefoot on the ground, I would be experiencing a natural pulsed magnetic frequency. It's called the Schumann resonance that the earth naturally emits. In addition, your brain and your heart produce an electromagnetic field that people around you can actually feel, can actually sense from over 15 feet away. If you learn how to control your emotions, how to control your brainwaves, how to control something that's being measured on me right now with this funny ring they had me put on before I got on stage that somewhere is showing my mood metrics, I don't know where, you can actually develop the ability to consciously control many of these variables. How many of you in here have had Reiki treatments, or any type of human touch treatments where someone isn't actually touching you, they're just getting their hand very close to your body? If you learn how to be in touch with things like your heart rate variability, with things like your breathing, with things like having a connection to the planet Earth, you can actually, believe it or not, without getting a surgery to put magnetic implants into your body, be able to tap into electromagnetism using your own body. And that would be a form of ancestral living that might fly in the face of biohacking, but that's something that I would consider a biohack. The ability to be able to control your emotions and your heart rate variability, being in touch with the planet Earth, knowing that your own brain and heart signals affect the brain and heart signals of those around you. Echolocation is another example. This is the ear of an individual who wanted to enhance his ability to hear, his ability to navigate, and so he wanted to turn himself almost into a bat or a whale that could echolocate. And this is something people are doing now. It requires a battery, it requires a little bit of an amplifier, and you can get this implanted in your ear to allow you to be able to echolocate without the use of sight. These are electronics that you can put into your ear. How many of you in here have this, by the way? It's out of curiosity. I'd love to talk to you afterwards and maybe play a game of tag with you blindfolded. See if you could chase me down. Echolocation, something that we can biohack, something that we can place into our bodies. But, once again, do we as humans have the ability to do some of these things without necessarily implanting technology in our bodies? This guy is Daniel Kish. How many of you have heard of him? This is a blind man. A blind man who has developed the ability to echolocate via a series of clicks and whistles and sounds. He's able to detect how quickly those come back to him. He started off just being able to navigate through his kitchen and his home, and now as a blind man, he can ride a bicycle through a busy city using this echolocation. Every single one of you in here has the ability to be able to do that. Please don't go out and get a bicycle and do it right now. Practice in your kitchen first. But again, very interesting that with a little bit of effort, you may not actually need to use expensive biohacks, computers, things implanted into your body to be able to tap into your own innate human biology and the amazing characteristics that are actually built into us. We have the ability to be Batman. We have the ability to echolocate. This man has proven it. This is Kevin Warwick. How many of you in here know of Kevin Warwick? He's one of like the godfathers of biohacking. He's known as Project Cyborg. He was one of the first guys to implant a chip in both himself initially so that he could find his way through his house and interact with things like his computer and his dishwasher. I would have found something cooler to do than interact with my dishwasher if I had a chip implanted. But he's also a man who did the same thing with his wife. He put a chip in his wife so that he could somehow, through some form of telekinesis, interact with his wife through this chip technology, be able to almost read other people's thoughts and sense other people's thoughts and sense other people's feelings and emotions and feel things without actually touching them. Implanted chip technology in Project Cyborg. There's some very interesting stories about him. And by the way, articles and stories and videos of all these people I'm talking about, I'll put over at the website. I'll show you at the end of this post if you want to study up on some of these people, because it's fascinating what they're actually doing. And this is about the chip that sends out the signal and the chip that he put in his wife that allows electronic telepathy. It's a very, very interesting anecdote from the story. Now, the thing is, though, I was reading a book 3 weeks ago, a fantastic book. Everybody in here should read this book, by the way. I just interviewed this guy on my podcast. His name is Dr. Thomas Cowan. He wrote a book called Human Heart, Cosmic Heart. And it goes into how not only do we emit this electrical field that I was talking about earlier that other people can sense and feel, but that there is actually this concept of atomic vibration. There's this concept that you can actually feel and sense and know other people's thoughts and emotions and feelings without actually touching them. And he goes into this in great detail in his book, more detail than I have time to get into today, but it's based on the concept of quantum physics, that we can actually interact with other people and with other objects without actually touching them. And this is why sometimes when you walk into a room and someone is stressed out, or someone is, how many of you are in here are familiar with the term energy vampire? Right, somebody, and they just seem to like suck out your energy, even though you haven't touched them, even though they're just in the same room with you. A lot of that is based on this concept of quantum physics and the frequency at which things vibrate, including our organs and our cells. Everything in your body vibrates. That's why you respond to things like music frequency and sound frequency. As a matter of fact, after reading this book, I get a massage once a week. I put my massage table in front of a special series of CDs. They're called Whole Tones CDs. And they actually play sounds that target specific organ groups. So I have a speaker on either side of me, and it's amazing what sound frequencies and music frequencies can do to the human body. No chips required. We can communicate with each other without actually needing electronic telepathy. Read this book. It's simply amazing in terms of us being able to tap into each other's electrical signals. Fantastic read. Now, how about this? An implantable compass. This compass will vibrate every time that you face the direction north. Anybody in here have this one? Well, I think this is a little bit ironic based off of our reduced ability to be able to connect with nature in this day and age. But how many of you have actually considered, rather than getting a chip implanted in your body, something like learning to read the stars, the sun, the shadows, the things that our ancestors would have done? Right? There are these things that we can certainly place into our bodies, but there's also this fact that we should tap into our own ability to be able to interact with nature, to be able to look up into the sky and know where the North Star is, or to be able to glance at the sun and detect where north is. There are tribes, there are hunter-gatherer tribes that more than left and right communicate in north, south, east, and west, and they simply know from a very young age which direction is north. And I guarantee that I don't know this for a fact, but they probably don't have a chip implanted in their little tribesman foot or something that vibrates every time they face the direction north. So again, ask yourself, am I, as a human, able to accomplish some of these things without necessarily using expensive biohacks? How about this guy? This guy actually got chlorophyll injected into his eyes. It wasn't chlorophyll per se, but something very, very like chlorophyll, a molecule that's similar to chlorophyll, injected into his eyes so that he would be able to see up to about 50 meters with night vision. He can see at night. And he's quite attractive too, as you can tell. His pupils are something I think that we would all love to have, those dark black pupils that make him look like he walked out of Star Trek. But he can actually see at night. He's enhanced his vision by getting chlorophyll derivatives injected into his eye. Well, I know another thing that can enhance night vision. It's called lutein and zeaxanthin, and the things that we get from eggs and the skin of fish and kale and the beta-carotene that we find in things like sweet potatoes and carrots. Whenever I see something like that, I ask myself, what could I do to get the same effect naturally? Could you have a nice bed of eggs over kale and carrots and skip the chlorophyll injections? And frankly, when I'm taking care of my body and I'm eating a very good diet, I do a lot of walking at night. I do a lot of hiking at night. I do a lot of exploring at night. And it actually does help with your night vision to be able to take care of your eyes the way that nature intended, getting things like lutein and zeaxanthin into your body. Again, no injections required. You guys are learning now how to look at life through the lens of ancestral living versus biohacking and begin to ask yourself these questions. So this gal, this is Mrs. Parrish, she actually went to South Africa. She went through a special form of therapy to decrease the length at which her telomeres shortened. She wanted to fix the caps on the end of her DNA that, if shortening at an increased rate, would cause increased longevity. And so she went through this special series of protocols to affect her telomeres. She spent months and months in Africa and came back. I believe she was in the United States, and it was relatively controversial, all these therapies that she went through to decrease the rate at which telomeres shorten and to increase longevity. Well, I've got news for you. There's actually one thing that you can do that can achieve a very similar effect. And by the way, she also underwent protocols that would somehow allow her to experience increased muscle mass, which is also associated with a decreased rate at which telomeres shorten and increased longevity. Well, there's actually a shortcut to this without traveling to South Africa for some sort of expensive procedure. It's called the thigh machine. It's called lifting heavy objects. No spandex required. You don't have to wear the funny socks. But believe it or not, one of the most potent things that you can do for longevity is to get a hex bar or a deadlift bar or a kettlebell or anything like. I have one in my office. I just lift heavy things at least once a day. My rule is I have to subject my body to straining and pushing or lifting or pulling against something that's really hard to strain or lift or push or pull against. And that, my friends, can be done without you traveling to South Africa for some special experiment. You could do that here with your own body weight. You could do one set of 5 super slow push-ups where you take 5 seconds down and 5 seconds up with your own body weight. Nothing expensive required, and you can actually increase longevity and decrease the rate at which telomeres shorten by simply lifting heavy things. You know, a lot of these self-quantification devices that we see out there, they also give me pause. I like to look at those through the lens of biohacking versus ancestral living as well. Devices that constantly produce a Wi-Fi signal or that have a Wi-Fi signal that we can so easily forget to turn off. How many of you in here right now have your phones on because you're taking copious notes from this fantastic presentation, right? But honestly, having your phone in airplane mode is something that I advise. You know, I wear a self-quantification ring, very similar to like a Bluetooth headset. And frankly, many of these, this one is the Aura. They're actually here. They don't do this, but many of these devices, the Fitbit, the Jawbone, they emit a pulsed Bluetooth signal every 1 to 3 seconds. And this type of Bluetooth signal has been shown to cause some issues with the human body in terms of things like blood-brain barrier leakage and things like possible DNA damage. There are issues that at the last biohacking conference, Dr. Jack Cruz brought up when it comes to Wi-Fi, when it comes to Bluetooth. I actually have my entire home hardwired with Ethernet cable. I don't have any Bluetooth appliances in my entire home. I stay as far away from Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals, especially constant Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals, as much as possible. And that means that when I get, and this is almost every day, someone sends to my doorstep some new self-quantification device, half of them go straight into my pantry or my garage or thrown in my kid's room to play with, turned off, because they emit Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And I'm not a big fan of constantly subjecting your body to those type of things. And then, of course, there's implantable tattoos with LED signals that actually enhance the ability to be able to see the tattoo at night. How many of you have spent a lot of money on a tattoo and ever been out at night and thought, crap, nobody can actually see this, so I should probably implant some LEDs in it so people could see my tattoo a little bit better? It's very interesting. No, nobody? Jeez. Not many party animals in here. You know what's very interesting is the last time that I spoke at the Biohacking Summit was in London, and I got an MRI when I was in London, a full-body MRI. The MRI can actually show you your redox potential, which parts of your body might have a reduced normal electrical charge. And there were actually 2 areas of my body that showed some extreme deficits when it came to electrical charge. One was my eye. I was training for a fight, and I'd just been hit in the eye, and my eye was broken. And that MRI showed that area of broken eye, the nasal bones right in the eye. The other area in my body that had an extremely reduced electrical charge was my right shoulder, which is covered in red ink from a tattoo, with red being one of the forms of ink that is the most damaging in terms of the amount of ink that actually stays in the human body. And it's interesting, not only do you have to be careful with the color of the tattoos that you use, but the actual implantation of LEDs into a tattoo would definitely be something I would not recommend in case any of you were thinking of it. But it's very, very interesting. You can actually get an MRI to look at what is called the redox potential of the human body. So what I want to do now is a little bit more of a rapid-fire format exploration of some other things that we can consider that would be ancestral alternatives to modern biohacks that we can tap into for easy or free or cheap without necessarily doing things to the human body, so that we can marry ancestral living with, and I pardon for the rather violent image, with modern biohacking, right? How we could be an ancient gatherer-hunter and a modern night vision equipped hunter and be able to tap into the best of both worlds. So let's go ahead and explore some of these concepts. Fitbit, Jawbones, things that monitor your heart rate, things that constantly tell you what your heart rate is at, your heart rate variability, where your nervous system is at, how nervous you are, how amped up you are. You can wear these devices constantly. But there's actually an extremely advanced method that you can use to achieve this same thing in a little bit more natural way. It's called your carotid or your radial pulse. You can actually, they used to do this a very long time ago, all of your grandparents, you can actually put a finger somewhere on your body and detect your heart rate with no fancy biohacking equipment required. You don't have to feed it into an iPhone because it goes straight into your brain. Imagine that. You can count for 10 seconds and multiply by 6 and know your heart rate when you wake up in the morning. And yes, you can write that down and you can track that, and there's no fancy Bluetooth or Wi-Fi emitting equipment that you need to wear to be able to do this. Think about that. You can actually know what your heart rate and your nervous system is doing without actually wearing fancy equipment. How about this? The training mask, hypoxia, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, things that we're doing now to reduce the amount of oxygen that we can breathe. This thing actually works. It does. It doesn't reduce the partial pressure of oxygen in the air. What it does is it creates a whole bunch of carbon dioxide right in front of your face that you're breathing in, and that increases your ability to be able to withstand the high amounts of CO2 that your body has to experience during exercise. It increases your tolerance to discomfort during exercise. It's a form of resisted breath training. There's another form of resisted breath training that you don't have to pay $85 for, however. It's called breathing through anything restricted, including your nose or a straw. Okay, so you don't actually have to invest in some expensive piece of training equipment to experience many of the diaphragmatic and inspiratory and expiratory muscle training that you get from wearing a training mask. Even that deep nasal breathing that we did today, even things like alternate nostril breathing, all of these things can increase your ability to be able to breathe better without you purchasing some expensive biohack. So again, as you begin to consider what you're going to do, how you're going to biohack your body, first step back and ask yourself, do I kind of have the ability to do this on my own before I start forking over the cash for all these spendy tools and techniques and equipment? So breathing through a straw. How about this one? That's a photo I took of myself last week doing electrical muscle stimulation. My sexy black underwear. Electrical muscle stimulation. That's not a photo of me, you guys. Come on, tough crowd this morning. Jeez. Electrical muscle stimulation is something that a lot of folks are using to be able to increase the amount of lactic acid buildup in the body, to be able to use some sort of external controller unit as a form of an external brain to elicit a muscle contraction. And this actually works really well. You know what it works especially well for? It's very similar to that katsu training that's right outside right now, where you put almost like a tourniquet, a computer-programmed tourniquet around different areas of the human body to restrict blood flow during exercise. You get a huge release of lactic acid, and that can cause a growth hormone release that increases your ability to be able to respond to that exercise session. When it comes to building up lactic acid in muscle tissue, though, decreasing blood flow to muscles, there's actually another thing that you can do. Super duper advanced. It's called an isometric exercise. You'll find me at just about any airport gate while I'm waiting for a flight in a plank hold, or a push-up hold, or a squat hold, or a lunge hold, building up huge amounts of lactic acid in my body before I even step onto the plane. I'll be down in a position like this, and you can watch your clock, and you can try and stay there for 60 seconds or 2 minutes. Really good time to shoot for is 5 minutes, and you can do all this, believe it or not, without any electrodes attached to your body, and without any sexy black underwear on. But the idea is that you can achieve that's very, very similar effect in terms of a lactic acid dump with just simple isometric exercises. Sure, you got to go out of your way. You got to have self-control. You got to have the ability to move. You got to be able to think, okay, I'm going to do this rather than having a machine do it for me. But again, think about things that you can accomplish without a machine necessarily doing it for you. Meal replacements. How many of you drink meal replacements? You guys hear about this one, Soylent? Has anybody ever tried Soylent? When we look at meal replacements, some of them are good. There's one around here somewhere, Ambronite. If you look at the label on that, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty good stuff. I drink it. Soylent, though, the quote-unquote perfect human food, if you look at the ingredients, the very, very first ingredient is maltodextrin, which actually, it's a very long-chain complex carbohydrate that draws a crap ton of water into your gut and can actually result in a lot of gut distress when you drink it over time. There are a host of other ingredients in there, and I'm not the food babe. Who's somebody over in the U.S. who says if a third grader can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. I don't believe that. Right, like, whatever. If we look at, for example, pyridoxine HCl or palmitate or calcium D pantothenate, like these are big words, but they're actually natural vitamins. But many of the components of these meal replacement powders that we as biohackers are consuming instead of feeling all high and mighty, instead of eating the Big Mac on the airplane ride, we're the people drinking the powder in the cup. But you need to look at the label and you need to ask yourself whether or not this is actually natural for the human body, and can I simulate something like this at home? Let me give you an example. At home, I can go find, purchase, or pick and harvest organic fruits and organic vegetables. You can take these, you can slice them, and you can put them in a food dehydrator, which are very easy to come by. And if you don't have a food dehydrator, you simply slightly open your oven, and you put your oven at about 125 degrees. You take your sliced fruits and your sliced vegetables, you dehydrate them for the day, and then you put them into a Vitamix or a Blendtec or some big fancy blender. You blend the heck out of them, you pulverize them, and you get these extremely dense, nutrient-dense vegetable and fruit powders that you can actually use very, very similar to a meal replacement powder. Again, you're not going to be paying $6 to $10 per serving. You're not going to risk drinking or consuming some things that you may not want to consume. But again, we can return to a little bit of our ancestral roots and learn how to interact with food, learn how to interact with nature, and develop some of these type of replacement powders ourselves. Here's another one, compression. I have some of these fancy space-age gradated compression boots. They make your legs feel light as a feather after you've been in these things after a day of hard exercising. They actually work. I mean, this particular set was developed by a NASA engineer, and it gradates compression from your feet all the way up to your hips. But frankly, there are other things that you can do that are going to achieve a similar effect when it comes to milking metabolic byproducts out of your body. One extremely advanced technique, it's called inversion. Inversion. I actually do this about 5 times a day. If you could Google this if you want to, it's called Eldoa, E-L-D-O-A. I'm doing a form of Eldoa training now that actually allows you to be in these inverted poses with a lot of what's called myofascial stretching. You simulate many of these same pumping effects of something like an expensive gradated compression boot or compression therapy, but it's very seldom that I talk to people who are actually getting into inverted poses during the day, handstands, headstands. I like your deep squat over there, by the way. That's great. That's fantastic. Those are the type of things that we should be doing during the day, and we don't necessarily have to go out and buy an $80 pair of compression pants or a $1,000 pair of gradated compression boots to be able to achieve some of these things. We just have to build these in as daily movement snacks, daily movement habits to allow us to be able to tap into some of these benefits. Cryotherapy. How many of you in here have done cryotherapy? Stepped into a cryotherapy chamber? Yeah, absolutely. Cryotherapy, it's great. It works. 2 to 3 minutes, spending 50, 60, 70 bucks. It works. But believe it or not, a dip into the Baltic Sea not only achieves a very similar effect, granted you do have to get wet, but you actually get, when you're in water, a compressive force against the body that can actually enhance the benefits of cold thermogenesis without spending a bunch of money on a cryotherapy chamber. I took a 5-minute cold shower this morning. I do it every day. I don't use the expensive cryotherapy chambers. You don't have to either. You can achieve the same effect. There's not a big physiological difference. Infrared therapy. I'm a fan of infrared. I'm a fan of saunas. I'm a fan of heat. But you can also put on a bunch of clothes, take a clue from sports like MMA and sports like wrestling, and simply increase your body heat by exercising in hot weather, by eschewing air conditioning every once in a while, by putting on jogging pants and going for a run in the afternoon. You don't have to necessarily step into a sauna to get the benefits of heat training. You can simply exercise and go to the gym and wear more clothing than you normally would, and you still produce things like heat shock proteins and some of the things that you'll get from being in a sauna. It's about being hot. It's not necessarily about jumping into a $6,000 infrared sauna unit. Vibration platforms, these vibration platforms that move the body, that generate lymph flow and blood flow and keep you from getting sick and cost $1,000 for you to stand on or for you to lay on. Well, a lot of people will have these and they'll go in their office and they'll stand on the vibration table for a while. You know what I do? Very, very simple form of vibration training. It's called jumping jacks. Every hour during the day, I do 100 jumping jacks. Just to basically get all those lymph flow and blood flow benefits. I don't own an expensive vibration platform in my office. All I do is freaking move. And you can do the same thing. Again, you have to set up these little habits, inversion and movement, taking a cold shower. Once you start to do all this stuff, though, it doesn't have to be that expensive to be a quote-unquote biohacker, even though these aren't necessarily biohacks. Therapy, I use these blue-green therapy glasses and, the in-ear devices for therapy, but nothing beats actually just getting out during the day and looking at the sunshine. I would guarantee any of you are going to feel better today if you take a few minutes. Even when the sky is cloudy, you're going to get some sunshine exposure. To expose yourself to the sun every single day. I step outside and I get sunlight, big bursts of sun, especially that blue light from the sun in the morning or the afternoon. It can assist with your circadian biology, and you don't have to buy expensive devices. And frankly, I've seen some people who use these objects, they won't go out in the sun because they've used their special object. You don't need to do that. You can actually just get out in the sunlight. TDCS I talked about earlier, magnetic stimulation to increase blood flow to the brain. There's something completely natural that actually in clinical studies has been shown to increase cognition by directly increasing blood flow to the brain. It's a form of yoga. It's called Kundalini Yoga. I do it almost every day. It's a mix-up of breath work and different activities that you can do. But this has been shown to cause a huge dump of blood flow to the brain. Again, you don't have to attach fancy electrodes to your brain. You don't have to do TDCS. All you need to do is Google Kundalini Yoga. Pull up a free YouTube video. Learn how to do it. These type of things can actually give you the same effect as attaching a bunch of electrodes to your brain, including increasing alpha brainwave production in a very simple and affordable and easy to use way. So a few other quick things here, and I'm coming up against time. So
I just want to go over a few things. Special headbands that you can wear to increase your ability to meditate or to lull you into meditation. Well, my children and I simply go outside for 10 to 15 minutes a day and do what is basically a sit spot. This is influenced by Native American tribes who would go out, sit in nature, and simply feel and taste and touch and smell everything around them. Just go outside and sit for 10 minutes. I dare any of you today. Rather than putting a fancy meditation headband on, go outside, find a quiet spot, sit and look at the water for 10 minutes. See if it's harder than you think. Try it. But it actually works, and there's no expensive app or headband required. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide injections for anti-aging, what are called NAD injections. These are all the rage now in the States. You can go and get these to increase your ability to be able to live a long time. Well, believe it or not, you can get the same NAD, the same stuff that they're getting injected, by using this stuff called Pau de Arco bark tea. I use it every day. I ferment it overnight. I blend it with sunflower lecithin to make it highly absorbable, and I drink that as part of my smoothie. It's got beta-lactine in it, which is one of the same compounds that you're getting produced when you get these expensive NAD injections. No special anti-aging clinics required. It's super cheap, almost free, easy, and all you need is a blender and some tea bark. Here's another one. They're now developing the growth of human organs by exposing special bacteria to light to produce cellulose, to enhance the body's ability to be able to heal itself with bacteria producing new organs. Well, believe it or not, one of the ways that the mechanism of action for this is by increasing the amount of chlorophyll in the human body. But there are other ways that we can do that without necessarily getting bacterially grown organs. Take aloe vera, for example. Perfect example of something that can increase your ability to be able to create new stem cells. It's a plant that actually regrows itself. Chlorella, spirulina, colostrum. These are all perfect examples of other foods that allow you to regenerate and rebuild without actually using some type of cellulose-fed bacteria exposed to light to cause the same effect. Look up foods that cause regrowth of the body. I'm putting a link in the page that I'll give you at the end here that shows you a bunch of different foods that can help with this. We're almost done. Some smart drugs, nootropics. How many of you in here take these? Smart drugs and nootropics for dopamine and for neurotransmitters and for acetylcholine. Well, before we turn to expensive smart drugs and nootropics, consider this. Capers, one of the best foods for increasing dopamine in the human body. St. John's wort is very, very similar in terms of its ability to induce happiness and good feelings. Bananas cause a dopamine dump in the human body. I diffused pine. And I diffuse peppermints, two different essential oils that enhance wakefulness and cognition in the body, again, without swallowing any fancy smart drugs. Eggs, walnuts, fantastic sources of choline, the same stuff you're paying $60 for in some kind of expensive nootropic bottle, you can actually get from food. So before you actually go out and buy some expensive nootropic, take a look at your diet. Audit your diet and ask yourself, am I getting the neurotransmitters necessary for enhancing cognition? So ultimately, when it comes down to making that decision about whether or not we're going to strap the equivalent of a prosthetic goat limb to our body and go out and live with the goats and shock our body.
Ability to not be able to speak the human language and do all these spendy biohacks and potentially unnatural thing to our bodies. Perhaps all we really need to do is just get back in nature, like my kids here, and just go play with the goats. Get a little fresh air. Get some sunshine. Eat some real food. Ask yourself if you're doing those things before you go out and become some cash-flinging biohacker who's trying every fancy new device out there. Now, I didn't leave a lot of time for Q&A, but I'm going to be around today, and I love to talk to you guys about this kind of stuff. I've put a resource page up for you over at bengreenfieldfitness.com/Finland16. You can delve into any of the things that I just went through, because I know I went through a lot, in a lot more detail. All the nitty-gritty details are there. I've got a book at beyondtrainingbook.com that you can read. It's 500 plus pages of biohacks for digestion and brain and sleep and performance and all sorts of other stuff. The man with the bow tie is on stage now, so I need to wrap things up. Everything I recommend is at greenfieldfitnesssystems.com. And I want to encourage you today, get some sunshine, go barefoot every once in a while, do some inversion, do some deep squats, keep your body healthy, And you guys and girls, have a fantastic day here at the Biohacking Summit. Stand up and give yourselves a hand for being here. Take some deep breaths. And thank you for attending today.
How about a round of applause for Mr. Ben Greenfield? How about a round of applause?
All right.
Now, we're going to put him on a little test.
Uh-oh.
A little test. See if his biohacking methods have worked and are working.
Oh, no.
So,
are you going to make me memorize a deck of cards?
No. But we have a Fitwood from Finland, and they have a beautiful Scandinavian designed exercise equipment. So who would like to see Ben?
Wait, a Fitwood?
Fitwood, yeah.
Is that some sort of like sexual performance enhancing device? Or?
I don't know what all they have, so let's invite the CEO to tell us.
Okay.
So give a hand of a round of applause for Ossi.
Not what I was thinking.
How, Ben? I'm Ossi from Fitwood of Scandinavia.
Hello.
You look like a fit guy, so we thought that we'll put you to do some practice here on the platform.
Okay.
So that's
Please don't tell me I need to balance on this like a unicycle.
That's an ab wheel, but it's look like quite a traditional one, but it's actually not. It's a new category, example of a new category of sustainable things. This is sustainable food. It's zero emission aluminum or stainless steel. These are the greenest things today on the fitness equipment
so
market.
I can't break it. That's what you're saying.
And it's very hard. You can't break it. You can try it.
So you want me to demonstrate how to use this up here on stage?
Yes.
I swear, you guys, this is not like planned in advance. I did not know I was going to be doing this, but I'm going to take off my coat so I don't rip it. Okay. Ab wheel. So if I understand you correctly, this is the one that you put on the ground in front of you and do the, okay. I don't even know if you guys will be able to see me with the thing.
Come here, grab this thing.
Here, I'll do it right here. You know, I actually had a friend who used one of these to train for an Ironman triathlon because he couldn't swim. And he actually did the whole Ironman triathlon by training with an ab wheel. He would just like do this for 10 minutes a day. So, get into a position like this, nice crawl position. From this position, you want to extend your body as far out as you can. Full extension. Oh, play me some Eye of the Tiger. That's right, baby. Ugh. And then contract your abs, not your low back, to pull yourself back into position. You think about those muscles you want to use. That actually feels pretty good. Get to full extension here. Contract the abs. And come back. It actually only takes 2 reps to get 6-pack abs, right? That's it. Right. Is that what you wanted me to show? A demonstration?
Yes, and after hard training, it's maybe...
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have to work out at all today.
After hard training, maybe some massage that you can try as well.
Foam roller.
Yes.
Yeah, foam roller.
Yes.
I'll show you guys one foam roller move that might get you from some funny looks from your neighbors who may think you're doing something illegal. A lot of people will roll their backs with a foam roller. This is a nice foam roller. I might need to talk to you afterwards. I need to do one of these. When you're sitting a lot, as you are today, or if you're at your office and you don't have the option to have a standing workstation, one of the best moves to reduce low back pain and to open up your hip flexors is to take a foam roller, put it on the ground like this. Straddle it, get one leg right on top of the roller, right here, and you're going to find a really sensitive spot right in the meat of the outside of your crotch. And rather than rolling, what you do is you shift your whole body from side to side, just like this, and you're going to find that it's smashing your hip flexor and your psoas. So what you want to do is just basically make love to the foam roller for about 2 minutes like this, just finding all those different areas and smashing them. And you can roll back and forth on them a little bit, so even mine are kind of tight. And then what you do, here's the key, this is the trick. Plant your knee on the ground behind you, and then put one leg forward, stand up, and reach for the sky, and hold that for about 6 to 10 seconds right after you've done the rolling on the hip flexor. You do this for both sides of your body. It's an amazing way to reduce low back pain. A lot of people will just roll the foam roller on their back, but that move that I just showed you is perfect for anybody who sits a lot. It's my #1 move for the foam roller. So that's a cool roller. It's nice and hard.
I like it. You can send me a check later on for saying
it was
that.
very nice to hear,
Yeah.
listen to you here. If you like, we can give you one. Just come to our stand. This is purely ecological materials. It's all natural.
I don't know if TSA is going to let me fly home with that. They might think it's a weapon, but I will come to your booth later on and I'll
we
do
can
a
mail you
workout.
one at home.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Over the hand
cool,
for
thanks.
Fitwood. And you can find them right there. You can do some pull-ups, chin-ups.
Folks, we have a playground area. You can test our products, and we're
All right,
bringing
thanks,
to
you
market
guys.
2 new
Thanks, man.
ones on
Thanks,
January next year with an NHL hockey star Alexander Barkov, with 2 brand new products that doesn't exist on the market today. So please join with us on that campaign with Sasha Barkov. Thank you.